Welcome everybody to this month's Vanderbilt University School of Engineering's graduate program conversation hour. Today's episode for the month of March is with our Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Specifically, we'll be focusing on our environmental engineering program here at Vanderbilt University. It is my pleasure to introduce our three graduate student panelists. All are part of the environmental engineering program. And what I'll do is once I'll have everybody just do a very brief introduction when I call in your name. But before we do that, my name is Gabriel Luis, so I'm the Director of Graduate Recruitment for the School of Engineering here at Vanderbilt University. So welcome everybody, all of our viewers, to tonight's session. You will have just received a registration link that's going out on our various social media platforms. Please feel free to fill that out. It's a way for me to get to know you better throughout today's session, and I will be able to follow up with you after today's event. So, without further ado, I will introduce our guests, and we will get started with tonight's conversation. So, for our viewers, if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to any moment, anytime, just to submit your questions, and we will answer as many as we have, as many as possible, as many as we have time, for tonight's session. So, we'll go ahead and begin. First off, Danielle, would you like to give everybody just a brief introduction of who you are?
Of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Gonzalez. I'm a third-year PhD student here at Vanderbilt, and I work mostly on groundwater modeling.
All right. Thank you. Kaylin.
Hi, my name is Kaylin Warren. I'm a PhD student in environmental engineering, like we said, and I work mostly in wastewater contamination and remediation.
All right. Thank you. And Megan.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Megan Harkema. I am a fourth-year PhD student in the environmental engineering program here at Vanderbilt, and I work in the nuclear environmental engineering program. So I work doing safety analysis and design for advanced nuclear reactors.
All right. Wonderful. So first question that I'm going to ask is, so why graduate school? So why did you want to go to graduate school? And I'm just I'll put the question out, and then whoever wants to go first, feel free to have at it. All right, that's the first question.
Okay, I'll go first. So I went to graduate school for a lot of reasons, but one of the big ones was that I didn't really know yet what I wanted to do in terms of a specific career. I knew my career goals were to work in a sort of sustainability and climate-friendly energy position, but I wasn't quite sure how to get there. So I applied to graduate school, specifically Vanderbilt, to help me sort of finesse that area of the intersection between nuclear energy and environmental engineering.
Go.
Okay, so I can go next. So in my case, during my undergrad, I had really good mentors that got me interested into science. And from there, they encouraged me to keep going with my research. I've never thought that I wanted to go to industry. I wanted to go first to do academia and see if it worked for me. And it actually is. I really enjoy what I have been doing here at Vanderbilt and in my master's and in my undergrad as well.
And I went to graduate school. I was influenced a lot by the track that my parents took. They both have PhDs in a STEM field. So I knew about science graduate school growing up and knew that it was a wonderful opportunity to continue learning deeply in a field. But I also love teaching. And so like Danielle, I really enjoy the academia portion and getting to grow both educationally and on the flip side of that, teaching education.
All right, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that information. Next question. So why Vanderbilt? Why Vanderbilt School of Engineering in terms of when you were applying to different schools? At the end of the day, how did you come to wanting to come to our university?
I weighed a lot of factors. I loved the fact that it was in a big city, as well as having a lot of nature around. So location was big. At the same time, I really love that Vanderbilt is interdisciplinary. It's easy to communicate across departments. It's easy to work with multiple departments at the same time, and even be involved in completely different schools, such as like the business school or the Peabody College, as well as the School of Engineering. And so my training is as a chemist. So applying to graduate schools, I knew I wanted to do something a little more tangible and shift into environmental engineering. So I thought Vanderbilt would be a good fit for me because I could bring in that other discipline into engineering, and they would be very welcoming of that.
I can go next. So in my case, I was really lucky, actually. When I was finishing my master's, I received an email from my current advisor here at Vanderbilt saying that he was looking for PhD students. So I looked at the university and the faculty here, the classes, as Kaylin said, the connection between different departments, it's amazing. And I've been able to study and do a lot of research with a lot of different faculty members and students. And that is what brought me here as well to Vanderbilt.
Okay, so I had a really interesting introduction to Vanderbilt. So my background is in nuclear engineering. My undergraduate degree and training are in nuclear engineering, which obviously has some big differences from environmental engineering, or at least what some might call traditionally environmental engineering subjects. But I knew while I was doing my undergrad that I was really interested in environmental engineering. I even took some courses in sort of wastewater treatment and aquatic chemistry to help me out with that environmental engineering background. So one day when I was walking back from class as an undergrad, I was like, I wonder if somewhere has a nuclear environmental engineering program. So I honestly just popped it into Google, and Vanderbilt came up at the first of the list. And the more I did research on it, the more I realized that Vanderbilt is one of the only programs in the nation that combines those two subjects. So it really just seemed like the perfect fit for me.
All right. And what I think is, especially in this part of the conversation, what's important to mention is the fact that environmental engineering at Vanderbilt is not necessarily a traditional environmental engineering program. There are numerous opportunities to work cross-discipline. There are many different types of combinations of resources you can utilize or research institutes you can utilize on campus. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about how that unique culture of collaboration works at Vanderbilt?
Sure. Yeah, I can go first. So for me, it's been really helpful because I get to work on both sides of the nuclear environmental engineering aspect. So I get to work with both designing new reactors that are hopefully produce less hazardous waste that we then have to deal with disposing of later. But I also get to work on the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle and looking at how we treat and manage the waste that currently exists. So this means that I've gotten to meet some of the experts in both of those fields, which, to be very honest, outside of Vanderbilt, I haven't come across an area where you would get those two experts in the same room, So I have a lot of good things to say about Vanderbilt in that instance, as well as just all of the really awesome researchers I've been able to meet here. And the other really cool thing is that if you're doing a PhD at Vanderbilt, one member of your committee must be from a different department than the civil and environmental engineering department to sort of foster that interdisciplinary approach.
On my end of things, I mentioned that my background is chemistry. That's what my bachelor's is in. And for me, the interdisciplinary nature of this program really is exampled for me by the fact that I do a lot of laboratory work, and on a day-to-day basis, I feel a lot like an analytical chemist, like an applied chemist. And so it wasn't a massive field change. There was a learning curve, but I still got to build on the foundation that I created for myself in a more fundamental science, and then brought it into this more applied field. We take field trips. I've been across the country so far at different Superfund sites or different contaminated waste sites, taking soil core samples, and getting to really apply the knowledge that I loved so much about science in like with my own hands. And I really love that aspect of the interdisciplinary nature.
Yeah, in my side, previously, before coming to Vanderbilt, I did a lot of climate studies, and I worked on trying to understand climate from a data-driven perspective. When I came here to Vanderbilt, I started doing more modeling and more fundamental physics on that end. And it is really interesting to see how can I go to the EES department to speak with professors that are really good at this end of physics, and also go to our department, the MBA department, to talk to professors that are really good at the statistical models and also to do numerical simulations with them. So this integration is really good for me to be able to explore different ways of how to do my research and how to improve the research that I'm doing as well.
Daniel, that reminded me of something as well. Like I've been able to take advanced graduate courses in other, like in chemistry or in other departments. It's not just limited to research. Your coursework can also be very interdisciplinary. And in fact, it's very encouraged in our department.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. So, I mean, Daniel, you're probably going to say the same thing. I think we have to take something like 30 didactic hours, but only 10 to 12 of those have to actually be environmental engineering courses. The rest is what you need to perform your research the best possible way. So.
Yeah, and I have been taking courses from the computational science department, chemical department, EES, Earth and Environmental department. So it's really good that you have that possibility as well.
Yes, wonderful examples. I'm glad you brought those into the conversation. And kind of on that same topic of, just interdisciplinariness, like, when it comes to the application process, I know that we have viewers out there that are wondering about, kind of what are some things that worked for you, or do you think worked for you in the application that got you noticed, when it came down to the application. So yeah, like what are some suggestions you think you could give some of our prospective students when it comes to that?
I would say the number one is, as we know in the world, a lot of it is about who you know and making sure you're getting your face out there and speaking with people in advance. So one of the things that I did, which I actually have to thank my mom for, because she's the one who's like, you need to drive down to Nashville and meet with this person you want to be your advisor before you apply. But so she actually, I have to give her all the props for that. But so I met with my advisor before I had even completed my application, which I think really helped Vanderbilt and him to understand that I was really interested in the program, and that I thought, at least on my end, and I think my advisor thought as well, that I could be a good fit in the program. And then going back to the interdisciplinary thing again, so both Kaylin and I don't have undergraduate degrees in environmental engineering, and to be honest, I think that actually helped me with the track I took here at Vanderbilt. I think it put me in a really unique position where I was the person that Vanderbilt wanted to help do this research because I had the background, but also the passion for it.
Passion, yes, Megan. That was exactly the word I was thinking of, was to show your passion. I think that has been a real advantage for me in just how I have approached my education, is to show your passion. Whatever it is that makes you unique, I think that will shine through, especially because graduate degrees they're not like undergraduate degrees. They're a lot more self-motivated. And so if you can show your passion and your motivation, I think that speaks volumes about how someone might think you could perform in a program. I think also, like Megan said, do your research. In a lot of graduate programs, especially PhD ones, it's different from undergrad in the sense that it's not an admissions board deciding on whether you have the merits to be a scholar at this university. It is individual people who have grants or programs with slots, and it's a much more personalized basis. So if you can show, if you can't travel the way that Megan did, maybe set up a Zoom call, or even in your applications, anything you can mention that shows that you know this program, you've done your research, and what do you love about it, and what's your passion?
Yeah, I completely agree with Megan and Killian. That is passion is one of the most important things, and also knowing the person that you would like to work with. In my case, I knew that Jesus, my advisor, is the one that I wanted to work with, and I saw the research that he was doing. I saw what the department has. I know what is it that I'm interested in working on in those sites. Because Killian said it's true. It's a PhD is more of your research, is what you want to do, and to see if the advisors or the professors, the faculty have the research to be able to do that. I have the expertise to be able to do that.
And I will also add, it doesn't have to be like narrowly the passion of environmental engineering. Like, I am definitely passionate about the environment and cleaning up the environment. And that's one of the reasons I love the work that I do. But generally, I tend to focus in applications. Personally, I'm very passionate about the combination of art and science and the way that those two intersect, whether it's just from making a graph look adorable and readable and tell the story of the data. What are we trying to get at? And I think that's the passion I like to focus on, because I think it's more unique to me at my core. And then on top of that, I also absolutely care about environmental engineering.
And kind of on that topic, and it's important for our viewers to know, so our guests tonight are PhD students. So environmental engineering also has a master's program as well. There are master's students. But when it comes to the application to the program for the PhD program, how important do you think it is to have some type of research experience coming in when you're applying?
So I can talk in my perspective. It was really important for me because at the time that I was looking for a master's or for a PhD, I wanted to know that I was able to do research, and part of being a researcher is a personality thing, because you have to work a lot, you have to get some results, but not always things worked out the way that you wanted to work out, and you have to have a tolerance to frustration. So it's about having that personality and knowing that you are able to do that. That said, I have met people that have come directly from undergrad without having any research experience, and they are doing just fine as well. And yeah, that is my thought on that.
I think as long as you're willing to learn and work hard and ask for advice and direction, I don't think it's necessary to have research experience to thrive as a graduate student. I will say that I did have research experience in undergrad, and like Daniel, it was incredibly helpful for me, but because I hated it. I did not like any part of it. I was miserable. I did 2 different chemistry research experiences, and I was like, I love this field. I love this subject, and I don't like anything that I'm working on. And that propelled me into talking with my advisor and being like, I am unmotivated in this work. I don't enjoy doing this work. And that's what got me into engineering, into something more applied, where I feel so much more satisfied and am doing something that I love and can still apply the degree that I love. And so sometimes research is really helpful for ways you might not expect it to be.
Okay, and so with the 2 opposing yet equally valid sides, I'm going to split the middle, and I'm going to say that it depends. So I would say it depends on the advisor that you're working under, to be quite honest. So if you have an advisor maybe with a larger group, a larger cohort of students who you can work with to kind of get your feet under you in the research arena, maybe you don't need to have as much research experience from undergrad. However, if you work with a sort of more hands-off advisor and that's their approach to mentoring, then maybe you do need some undergraduate research experience so that you know how to do a literature review on your own, and you have experience, like Daniel said, when things don't go according to plan, you can come up with a plan B or try to figure out why whatever happened. So I would say it depends on the person, it depends on the program, it depends on the advisor.
I like that a lot, Megan. I will say though, I remember the first day I walked into lab at Vanderbilt and I was like, oh my God, I am never gonna be able to do that. Like, what? Just run that on my own? No, I'll always need someone helping me, holding my hands. And then 2 years later, I look back and I'm like, whoa, I'm doing the thing that I thought I could never do. And there's another hurdle. I'm like, but I'm never going to be able to do that. And so I think there is some like trust in, you don't necessarily need the research experience to know that you can get over those hurdles in the moment. And feeling that doubt doesn't mean that it's impossible or you're not capable.
And also back to what Kaylin was saying about how, at year one, you're terrified and you're like, I could never do this. It's not like you're doing, there are some like exam type things along the way, but it's not like, okay, I got this check mark, therefore I'm qualified like this. It's just like a natural progression in your education and training as a PhD student. You get more and more comfortable talking in front of people, running really, really expensive instruments with hazardous samples on them and getting really cool results out of it. That's more so Kaylin than it is me, but still props to her.
You're right. It's a progression, and the track is it's a very well thought out track at Vanderbilt. Specifically in this program, there are deadlines, there are guidelines, and it really does, like Megan said, guide you.
Yeah, and I got to say that, you are doing a PhD, you are learning, so it is expected for you to make mistakes at the beginning and to learn how to improve in your research. And there is a lot of people that is also willing to help you to do that.
Yes, no, very, very. So, it's good. It's good to definitely mention what you've all been, really talking about, which is there is no one size fits all when it comes to the application process. It's everything is done on a very individualized basis, which is important. And like, so when you were coming into graduate school, like even when you were applying to our program, what is something you wish you knew that you know now about, just your experience in graduate school in general, that you would want all our viewers to know up front?
I'm gonna just say you do not need to know everything and you should not act like you know everything. That is the sum total of my what I wish I knew when I was applying to it in my first year of graduate school. It goes off what Daniel was saying, that this is a learning experience. You're not expected to be an expert in your first, second, third, even fourth year, but just enjoy the process is, I guess, another piece of advice I would say.
So I got to say that the same thing as Megan said. You don't have to know everything. It's about the process of learning and enjoying that process. That you are going to make mistakes, and that is okay. You're not expecting to be an expert from day one once you start your PhD or your master's even. So yeah, that is something that you have to keep in your mind. Go back and say, hey, I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, but I will try and I will do my best in doing this.
I wish I knew that I had more agency in my learning experience. I think there were multiple instances in my first 2 years where if I wasn't, being assigned the literature, well, then I didn't have to read it yet. And then later I felt like I was very behind. And I was like, oh, well, I wish if I had just known, you're some professors say read an article every day, and I'm like, well, I can't do that. Like, that's too much. I have all these other things to do. And I wish I had carved out more time to really be like an agent of the journey. And I think in that same sense, touching back to something that Megan said earlier, if you've had research experience, maybe you could feel more comfortable with a hands-off advisor where you're performing things more on your own versus not having experience or less experience and being in a large group, and knowing that what I needed transitioning into a slightly different field. And I wish I had been more aware of that so that I could communicate things that I had been feeling and experiencing earlier on.
All right, wonderful. And kind of, shifting to, okay, your experience of, once you arrived to Vanderbilt, you accepted the offer, you're here on campus, and let's talk a little bit more about what life is like here at the university. So my first question on this topic is, so tell us a little bit about the culture of the program, Environmental Engineering at Vanderbilt. So it is a very tight-knit group of people. Small faculty to student ratio. I mean, those are all things that are, awesome. That's excellent to have. But kind of, tell us a little bit about kind of what's the day in the life like for a student in the environmental engineering program at Vanderbilt. And at Vanderbilt, just kind of, for that matter.
So do you want pre-COVID or post-COVID?
Let's do both versions. We'll get an idea of kind of what the comparisons are. Yeah.
Okay, so pre-COVID, you wake up whenever you wake up, and that's the interesting thing too, is I know some people, you work according to your own schedule. So I know pre-COVID, I would be going into the office at 8:30, and I would see Daniel already in there, deep in the thick of things some days. Lots of meetings with your advisor, working on classwork in my first 2 to 3 years. It depends on, once again, kind of what's going on in your life and how your advisor handles the class thing. So my advisor had me do most of my classes very early on in my degree, so that now for the past more than 2 years, I really haven't been taking many classes. I've just been focusing on my research. But post-COVID, most of what I can do is a work from home sort of a lifestyle. So I wake up in the morning, I walk my dog, drink my coffee, start my work, do some modeling, do some analysis, write some papers. I think I'm hitting on most of the things I do in a day, if not, or a week, if not a day. But
So in my case, and I think I would be different from Kaylin as well, because you do a lot of lab work. But in my case, I'm similar to Megan. I do more modeling. So what I do every day is wake up early in the morning, go to the office. Even pre-COVID and now post-COVID, I work from the office because I have there my workstation. So that is my tool to do everything. So go to the office, work there. I meet with my advisor once every week, and that is really good because you get to advance on your research and do. And if you have any questions, you can have him at hand. What I also want to point out is that you can talk with other faculty as well, and you can talk with other colleagues that are there in the other university. And you can, if you're having a class with them, you just collaborate and do homework assignments, and you ask about research as well, which is really good to have that conversation. It was more pre-COVID, now post-COVID, not a lot of people are appearing to the office, but it's good as well. And in my case, my advisor wanted me to do research from the beginning. So I took a less load of classes at first, but that allowed me to improve a lot of my research and to have a lot of things done by now.
Yeah, so my life is a little bit different from that as an experimentalist working in the laboratory. So I don't really, feel day to day. I live more like week to week or month to month because it just depends on if I have an experiment running and if that experiment is going smoothly, or if something is leaking, which half the time something's leaking, and does the data look good? Do I have to rerun it? What are the stipulations of this experiment? Are they on 12-hour windows or 4-hour windows or 2-week intervals? And so I'll go through periods where I wake up and I'm in the lab for 8 hours a day. I pack my lunch. I'm doing that all week, or maybe every now and again there's a lull, so I just do a half day, and then I've got data. And then I'm working from home for 3 weeks and I'm doing data, and then I'll go in to run one last sample or set something up. And so my schedule is a little less predictable, but I like that. It keeps me from like, I like routine, but not too much routine. And so it works for me. I also think that, especially like Gabrielle said, this is a very tight-knit department, and that applies to the lab as well. There's our lab is its own little group. We have, the experimentalists down there, and like we see each other very frequently and know each other on a very on a personal basis. I would consider many people in this department my personal friends. So I think having that type of interaction with everybody, where we're all very collaborative and willing to help out on other graduate students' projects. Our lab manager helps out on everybody's projects. She's an incredible woman. I don't know how she does it all. So I just love the culture here.
All right, wonderful. And kind of on that same topic, so if we look at just kind of the university itself, being a student at Vanderbilt. So yes, we have the School of Engineering, but are any of you involved in any student organizations, or have you, for example, utilized any of the various resources on campus that the graduate school has, whether it be career services or student advising or other types of really neat outreach? Just in terms of, or it could be even the rec center, working out at the rec center. So tell us a little bit about just kind of the overall, life of what it's like at Vanderbilt also.
I'll go. It doesn't matter.
Whatever. The most involved with all of us, so I think.
Oh no, no.
No.
I'm involved at the Vanderbilt Center for Teaching. I got involved there my second year at Vanderbilt, and have just been continuing to grow in the way that I am involved. I started off, I was recommended by the director of graduate studies to be
also,
on the experience.
I don't think that's true, by the way.
On the experienced TA panel. And from there, I applied to be a teaching affiliate at the Center for Teaching. So I've been working with teaching assistant orientation every year, which has been really exciting to be involved with on campus. I've met incredible people who are also very teaching focused and education focused on from every school across humanities, STEM, the schools of religion. I've met incredible people that way.
Okay, I can go next. So I'm a member. Oops, sorry, my dog decided he was going to make a little introduction in the background. This is going great, guys. So I'm a member of the American Nuclear Society chapter at Vanderbilt. There's quite a few different clubs and membership opportunities out there. There's the Association for Civil and Environmental Engineers that's really big in the graduate program. I think Kaylin might have been more involved in that than I ever was. But you also mentioned sort of what other opportunities Vanderbilt provides. And I do kind of want to take this opportunity to bring out maybe a less fun, but really, really important topic, which is that Vanderbilt does provide a lot of opportunities and support for mental health for graduate students. And with the pandemic being what it has been over the past 2 years, I know that I've taken advantage of those resources, and they've been really, really helpful.
I wanted to also add on that. So I also know that there is the Student Graduate Council that we can all be part of, and they help in a lot of guidance students through that. But for me, as an international student, we also have the International Student and Scholar Service, and that entity allows us to explore more of a how American life is and what to do, for instance, with your tax reports and all that we as international students, we don't have any guidance on that when we come here. So that is one thing. And also as a Latin American students, we also have a Latin American and Caribbean Student Association. In that regard, we are a part of that, and we meet with other Latin American students and just talk about our culture and expose our culture or show our culture to other cultures. And that is also really interesting to have.
All right, wonderful. And my next question is about, so tell us, so feel free to go into depth also about this when it comes to your own research that you're doing. I think it'd be great to give our viewers an idea of kind of what does that encompass and kind of what is your own specific niche, your specific area of expertise that you're working on.
So I kind of start on my side. So for me, so I said I do groundwater modeling, but I have two avenues of research. The first avenue is looking into deep groundwater systems, how water moves through 100 meters or even kilometers deep. The idea behind this research is to find new where water is located so we can you make a conscious use of it, but also to know how much water is moving through these systems, because it seems that from a research side perspective, these deep groundwater systems convey a lot of water, energy, and solids. On that side, what we're trying to do is to come out with new strategies of how to detect this water and how to use groundwater modeling to assess this water movement. That is my deep research. The shallower research is more on the how water moves through meander bends. If you have a meander is just a river bending in on itself, and you have, once the river is going through one side, you have that water coming into the groundwater system and moving through the meander until it reaches the other side. What we are interested in these systems is looking at the biogeochemical potential. So if you have a river with pollutants in it, the idea behind this is that these meander bends will allow you to clean up that water. And that is a biogeochemical potential, looking into that reduction of pollutants or the nutrient cycling that these systems have. And those are the two avenues of research, both of them related to groundwater modeling, but into different contexts in some way.
Okay, I'll go next. So as I mentioned earlier, my research involves the intersection of nuclear engineering and environmental engineering. And like Daniel, and I think it goes towards some of the interdisciplinary nature of our program, I have two different sort of prongs to my research. The one that I'm writing my dissertation on involves the design of a subsystem within a type of advanced reactor called a molten salt reactor. These reactors, unlike the commercial nuclear reactors we use today, utilize molten salt. So think something kind of like the composition of table salt, except you heat it up to the point where it melts. And then you add fissile or fertile material to it. And then you use that to run a nuclear reactor. And so these reactors have both potential for environmental and safety benefits in comparison to the nuclear reactors we operate commercially for power in the United States and abroad. So within that system, I'm working to design what's called a molten salt system, which is used for sampling that complex chemical composition of salt that includes your special nuclear material in the core to help maintain the safety and operability of the reactor over the short and long term. The second prong of my research has to do with sort of the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle. So I'm involved in a project through the Consortium for Risk Evaluation with Stakeholder Participation, or CRESP, at Vanderbilt to perform a risk review of the facilities owned by the Department of Energy's Office of Environmental Management at the Oak Ridge Reservation. So we work on reviewing sort of safety basis documents for some of these facilities in the D&D program to help Oak Ridge understand where they might have opportunities to improve risk profiles.
And then my research is I specifically study the leaching of organic chemicals, specifically semi-volatile organic chemicals, from contaminated soils, sediments, and wastes into surrounding water supplies. Because we're trying to understand the behavior of these chemicals and why they might leach from soil into water when they have a low aqueous solubility. What is driving those processes? Because that has downstream effects of if we have a contaminated bed of soil, say an industrial site like a petroleum site, or from pesticides, or from aqueous film forming foams used at air bases, and that comes into contact with water, those chemicals leach into our water, that could get into our drinking water supply. So the work that I do is motivated by the Environmental Protection Agency. That is where my grant money comes from. That's who I interact with on a weekly basis. So for the EPA, we are using methods that our group has developed that assess the different factors of leaching. They were developed for inorganic chemicals, think arsenic, lead, some of those other ones that you might be familiar with as scary drinking water chemicals. The ones that I work with are also scary. Some are carcinogens and have other sad side effects. So we're adapting those methods because of the chemical properties. Like they sorb to plastic. So we can't use any plastics in the lab. They degrade when exposed to sunlight. So we can't use any clear vials. And so there's a lot of adaptation that has to go into just using the methods to even begin to understand what the differences in their behavioral properties are. So by the end of the research track that I'm on, we'll have validated 4 methods for the Environmental Protection Agency. I guess that's one prong, as well as uniquely contributed to understanding the behavior of semi-volatile organic chemicals as they leach from contaminated soil, sediments, and solidified wastes into water. And then we use both of those combined together in an applicative scenario where, say, a Superfund site that is already actively contaminated wants to remediate that site. Well, based on what we've learned and what we know in these tests that we've run, we could then assess that site and give options for remediation plans and what might the most cost-effective remediation plan be that will last longer than 10 years. And then you have to redo it again. What's something that's going to take you into 100 years, 200 years. And so that's like the applied side of the laboratory science and the like more theoretical understanding.
Right. Well, that's fascinating. I mean, there's just so many different avenues to take this research in, and there's so much potential there too. So I thank you very much for sharing that information about the research you're doing. I do want to just put out there again for our viewers. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. We're going to be here for a little while longer, so please feel free to send the questions, send them our way. Be happy to answer them. I do have another question though that I would like to ask, which is, so Vanderbilt, we're here in the city of Nashville, in the state of Tennessee. So tell me a little bit about what's your experience been in the city. Do you have like some fun top restaurants that you like to go to, or places you enjoy spending time in the city? as we've mentioned before, great city outdoor balance in terms of having kind of the best of both worlds in one place. So tell us a little bit about what's Nashville all about.
I like to say that Nashville's a good city for young professionals. That's what I generally tend to go towards. A lot of people that are living in Nashville now have moved to Nashville recently, like within the last 10 years. And so a lot of people here really want to be here and are trying to build something for themselves. I think there's like a new development or restaurant or shop every other week. Like it's a growing, bustling city. It's very lively, and yet there are many parks where I feel like I have completely escaped the city, and it's not that far, like less than 20 minutes away. Some, I think, to get to the lake is maybe like 45, closer to an hour, but that's like the farthest I go. 3 hours away is the Smokies, and I know a lot of people travel there for long weekends. So I think there's a little bit of everything you could get in Nashville. We'd be here all night if I listed off my favorite restaurants.
I think that Kaylin has a lot of great restaurant recommendations. If you need them, contact her.
Let me know.
I think we do need to like have like probably another session because I need to take some notes and find out.
Yes. And I think the final point that I'll make about the city is I'm a big family person. Family's very important to me. And I don't have any family in Tennessee, but there are like really cheap Allegiant flights to Virginia. And I can travel home and see my family. I can travel to Pennsylvania. Like Nashville is one of those locations that Atlanta, Philly, Charlotte, Orlando, like all these airports kind of connect through. And so it's usually has not been very difficult for me to stay physically in contact with my family, despite being over an 8-9 hour drive away.
I can go on my side. As an international student, and when I came here, I have no idea what Nashville was like. But I actually love this city. It's not too big, not too small. You have, as Kaylin said, places that are just new every other week. You have a new place coming in on. It's just increasing and in population and also increasing in buildings and all that. And you can do whatever you want here, essentially. If you want to go to a club, most of these clubs, as the Music City, you have live music playing in most of them. If you want to dance, you can also go and dance. If you are more of just hiking type of person, there is parks all around here that are really close by. And the only thing that I can say, but I think that this is for most of American cities, is the public transportation system is not maybe the best. And I don't have a car, so it's difficult for me to move around the city. But other than that, everything is just amazing, especially here near the Vanderbilt area. You have a lot of things to do close by.
Do you have a bike?
I don't. I want to get one, though.
Do you want a bike? I have one. I don't use it.
Oh, wait. We should talk later.
we can connect offline on the bike.
Good. I'm glad we did this session tonight. So now the new bump for the bike.
Yes.
Okay, so I grew up in a really small town in Michigan. So I would say that for the first 2 years or so, I really struggled to sort of enjoy the city of Nashville. It was kind of hard for me to feel like I fit in and had a good group of people around me. But eventually I learned to really love the city, and now I don't want to leave. What I would say is that Nashville is what you make of it. You know, if you come to Nashville or you've been a tourist in Nashville and you think that Nashville is just the Broadway party scene, you're missing out on so many different awesome little neighborhoods and cultural experiences and restaurants and things to do. Like Kaylin said, there's so many really awesome, gorgeous parks that you can do in the evening after you get done with work because they're only a 15 to 20-minute drive away. And then on the weekends, so I actually, like Kaylin was mentioning, I just got back from the Smokies 2 weekends ago. We went and enjoyed the weather. It was awesome. There's also, I'm a big hiker, so there's also some really cool waterfall hikes actually within about a 45-minute to an hour drive of Nashville. And some of them you can even like swim in swimming holes at the bottom of a really cool waterfall. So it's kind of hard to find examples of cities where you can just drive out of town for the day and go do that with your buddies, you know.
And also the weather is really nice too. So
Oh yeah.
if you enjoy those outdoor activities, you can do so for quite some time in nice warm weather.
Yes.
Mhm.
But if you have allergies, be prepared. That is
Oh yeah, allergies.
my one warning.
Campus is beautiful, but the Arboretum is allergy central.
It is.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that information about the city of Nashville, and so with once you graduate from the university, students that come out with PhDs. I mean, yes, some students, a decent percent, you could say, would go into academia. Others may go into national labs. Others may go into industry. So, kind of like, what are your plans? I mean, in other words, having a PhD degree, there are many different types of avenues you can take in terms of professional options, in terms of, there's a lot of adaptability when it comes to those types of opportunities. So what are you thinking when it comes to kind of your own career goals?
I'll go first. That's a great question, Gabrielle. Great question. Okay, so I have always sort of had the goal after I get done with graduation. I don't really want to go into academia. That's never been my main interest. Ideally, I would like to work for either a national laboratory or in some sort of energy policy or Department of Energy sort of management headquarters position. But like I was saying, I don't really want to leave the city of Nashville yet. So one of I don't want to say a requirement, but one of the things that's really important to have if you're looking for a position at a national laboratory is a postdoctorate experience. So I've been starting to consider what that might look like for me. And hopefully I would be able to stay in Nashville and do that at Vandy.
I can go next. So in my case, as I said earlier, academia has been my dream since I finished my undergrad. And I will wish to become a faculty either here in the US or back to my hometown or going somewhere else. But to do that, you have to keep going as a postdoc. In most places, you need to do that. So I would like to, after graduation, go for a postdoc position, either in a national lab or in another institution as well.
I've always loved teaching in so much that being a professor and continuing in academia has always seemed like a natural progression to me. At the same time, I feel like working with the EPA in my PhD degree has opened a door that I didn't know much about. And now that I've peered behind that door, I see there's a lot of outreach available at the EPA as well, and still performing amazing science. So I now feel torn. I'm not quite sure what I want to do anymore. I thought I had it all figured out. But kind of the same thing that everyone is saying here, I do think that a postdoctorate position is something that I would enjoy. I think I just love learning. And so the opportunity to hone my skills in some sort of like associated field, I think would be a really excellent experience before then launching into either government or academia. And I have found in some very preliminary research that the EPA offers postdoctoral positions. And so I'm like, that could be a fun little bridge, a hybrid, and then I could figure out what I want, what really calls to me then.
All these really neat opportunities. Thanks for sharing that. So we have several minutes left. And one of my last questions is, tell me a little bit about, like, your relationship you have with your advisor. Kind of how does that all work out when it comes to graduate student advisor relationship, as well as how all that works with all your other lab mates that you have, kind of how everybody works together.
I kind of start saying that I love working with my advisor. The way that an advisor works in a PhD, well, at the beginning, you need some guidance, of course, in your research. But after you start to develop your own research, your advisor is more there to support the research that you are doing, and not that you go too far away from your objective. Like, he's trying to pull you off and say, hey, you should keep here. No, don't look too far away because you will not graduate. In that side, it is really interesting because I feel that the relationship at the end with your advisor, it becomes like of course, regarding the difference, like a peer discussion about research. Hey, I want to do this. I feel that this is important, and he is trying to pinpoint what is important in your research and how to achieve that goal at the end. And of course, he's there to help you if you have some problems with, in my case, modeling or in some concepts that you don't understand yet. So he will be there for you to help you go through that track.
I have an amazing relationship with my advisor. I have nothing but great things to say about him. He is incredibly receptive on all fronts, and is amazing at coordinating everything that needs to happen in order to make not only experiments successful, but the degree track successful. And the minute that I voice oh, I don't feel like this is going the right way, or I'm not sure what to do here, he is able to respond and not only just tell me what to do, but will often guide me places to let me get there myself. Or, oh, you were saying that you weren't sure how to do this, so why don't you try it on this problem? And then we'll work through it together until I feel confident that I can move forward with that on my own. So I really do feel that he's an advisor and a mentor and a friend, and somebody that I very much trust. So I couldn't be more grateful.
And going off what Kaylin said, I think the word mentorship is really key here. I even think during orientation, we had a whole sort of hour-long session on what that word meant, because when I started graduate school, I had no clue what it meant, and I didn't realize that that was the role of an advisor. They're not so much your boss. They're there to make sure you're reaching your true potential, to keep you on track with your research, to be your biggest supporter when you're having a bad day, but also be there to tell you, hey, I know you can do better, when that's what you need to hear as well. Specifically, I've also had a really great experience with my advisor. He's helped open up so many doors for me in terms of the industry. He's really helped push me into being confident in that I can get some of these things done, and I can do them well. For me, that was always the thing that I needed help with, which I think is pretty common with women in academia, especially the sort of imposter syndrome feeling. So he's been really great in that experience so far. And then the last thing I would like to mention before we wrap up is that unlike sort of an undergraduate professor, your relationship with your advisor after a PhD is not done and over. They've been a part of your life for 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 years. They're going to be there. You're going to see them at conferences. You're going to be on committees with them in the future. Sometimes you might invite them to your weddings or tell them when big life events happen. They're there for more than just your academic achievement. And I think it's important to recognize that too.
Absolutely.
Right. Wonderful. We have 1 minute left, which means I have one last question. All right. Final thoughts. What do you want? What are just, before we end tonight, what are just final thoughts on your end that you would want the viewers to know before we end today's discussion?
Okay. I would say don't be so focused on the outcome. enjoy the process. Grad school is obviously a challenging experience, but if you focus so much on the outcome, you can overlook some of the really awesome things that happen in terms of creating all these relationships with people, just going through the normal stages of life that happen if you're like us and all went to graduate school in your early to mid 20s. So just enjoy the process.
Yeah. Kind of on that same note, Megan, I once had somebody say to me that, a PhD is a doctorate in philosophy about a certain subject, because you're really learning how to think about a certain subject. You're learning how to conceptualize and theorize and apply knowledge, data, whatever it is in that subject. And so it's like exactly what Megan was saying. It's about the process. It's a learning journey to get you to where you feel that you have a doctorate in philosophy. It's one of the highest degrees that you can achieve. It's one of the few that cannot be taken from you, like being disbarred or losing your medical license. Once you have your doctorate in philosophy, it's an incredible achievement. And so it's a difficult thing. So like Megan said, don't lose sight of the process. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. I will also just add that go one step at a time. It is a long journey, and you have to like keep behind of yourself. Don't lose yourself in the process, is what I'm trying to say. Go one step at a time. Sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. And you have to be able to see that and to go back and sort of try to rephrase what you are doing.
I think there were many times in my process that I could have lost myself without this community, and specifically the people that are here at Vanderbilt and the network that has been built here.
So community is key. It's well, and I think what you're all saying is, just always keep the big picture in mind. What's the end game? What is the goal here? And it's all worth it at the end. So that's kind of it's the journey and how you get there. But yes, well, that is all the time we have for today. I honestly think we could have like added a whole nother hour to tonight's discussion. I mean, this has really been a lot of fun. And I do want to thank all, three of you for your time tonight. I know that our viewers have really enjoyed this session as well. So I just want to thank you for your time, and this has been a lot of fun. And have a great rest of the night, and we'll talk